Okay, Gary Carl Simmons Jr. Classification: murder. Characteristics: robbery, rape, drugs, dismemberment. Number of victims: 1. Date of murder: August 11th, 1996. Date of arrest: next day, he surrenders. Date of birth: November 18th, 1962. Victim profile: Jeffrey Wolf, 21. Method of murder: shooting, 22 caliber rifle. Location: Jackson County, Mississippi, USA. Status: sentenced to death on August 29th, 1997. Executed by lethal injection in Mississippi on June 20th, 2012. 21-year-old Jeffrey Wolf and his girlfriend had driven from Houston to Mississippi to collect a drug debt between $12,000 and $20,000 owed by Simmons and Timothy Milano. When they got to Simmons' house, Simmons and Milano told Wolf they did not have the drugs or the money. An argument erupted and Milano fatally shot Wolf with a 22 caliber rifle. Simmons then hogtied and locked Wolf's girlfriend in a footlocker, removing her later to rape her and telling her that her life depended on how well she sexually performed. Boy, ugh. Simmons put the woman back inside the box and went into the bathroom where he dismembered and gutted Wolf's body in the bathtub using knives from his grocery store butcher shop. Simmons and Milano scattered the victim's remains in a bayou behind Simmons's property. Wolf's girlfriend managed to escape from the footlocker and ran to a neighbor's house to call police. Accomplice Milano was sentenced to life in prison for his role in the crime. That dirty inmate, Gary Carl Simmons, MDOC number R1943, race white, sex male, date of birth 11/18/1962, height 5'11", weight 264 pounds, complex, fair, built, large, eye color, blue, hair color, brown, entry date 9/3/97. So on October 11th, 1966, I keep calling him Carl, Gary Carl Simmons Jr. and Timothy John Timmy Milano were indicted for capital murder of Jeffrey Wolf while engaged in the commission of robbery. Simmons and Milano were also indicted for the kidnapping and rape of Charlene Brooke. Simmons was arraigned in a circuit court of Jackson County. On January 9th, 1997, he pled not guilty to the pending charges. Milano trial was served from Simmons on February 21st, 1997. The trial judge granted a change of venue motion to allow the jury selection from the venue in Lauderdale County, and then held that the remainder of the trial could be conducted in Jackson. Sentencing of the jury and duration of the trial. The trial began on August 25th, 1997, and 4 days later, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all three counts of the indictment for the kidnapping and rape. Simmons was sentenced to separate licenses, and separate sentencing hearing was held on the capital murder conviction, and the jury found unanimously that Simmons should suffer death immediately thereafter. The trial judge capital murder charge and 2 consecutive licenses for the kidnapping and rape convictions. Let's see. I think we read this. Okay, I'll just reread it again because I guess there's more facts to this one. On August 11th, 1996, Jeffrey Wolf and Charlene Brooke drove from Houston, Texas to Jacksonville County, Mississippi to pick up some money from some friends that they were in debt. Upon their arrival on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, they checked into a hotel. Wolf then left to meet Sonny Milano, Timothy Milano's brother. Later that evening, Wolf, Sonny's girlfriend, and Charlene went to dinner. During dinner, Wolf asked if Sonny planned to go to uh, Gary's house that evening. Sonny Milano decided to go to Simmons' house, arriving there after dropping his girlfriend off. When he arrived, Gary and Timothy were the only two at the house. Simmons asked Sonny to get in touch with Wolf. Wolf told Sonny that he would be there in a minute. Sonny conveyed this information to Simmons, and Simmons told Sonny to leave the house. Wolf, so Jeffrey and Charlene later arrived at the house. Gary walked into the kitchen to get a beer while Charlene sat down at the table in the living room. Charlene heard Wolf and Milano chatting. Je- Jeffrey mentioned money he was owed. Apparently, Gary and Timothy owed Jeffrey between $12,000 and $20,000. Charlene testified that she then heard gunshots and saw Jeffrey fall to the ground. Gary grabbed Charlene and ordered her not to look in the direction of Jeffrey's body. Charlene noticed Timothy standing directly behind Jeffrey, holding a 22 caliber rifle. Gary took Charlene into a back bedroom and forced her to lie face down on the floor. He placed himself on top of her and began questioning her, asking whether she or Jeffrey were law enforcement officers, whether she or Jeffrey had any drugs on him, and who were they and knew they were in Mississippi. She became understandably hysterical and simply responded that she did not know anything, as she and Jeffrey had only become acquainted a few weeks ago. After Gary finished questioning Charlene, he tied her hands behind her back, bound them to her feet so he could rape some rope, and locked her in a metal box with dimensions similar to a large footlocker near his bedroom, telling her he was on a time frame that he could not mess up. Charlie managed to untie her hands and feet and began kicking the top of the box unsuccessfully, trying to get out. After some length of time had passed, Gary returned to the box and took Charlene out. Simmons what Gary was undressed. He forced her to lie face down on the floor of the bedroom, and Gary then raped her. Charlene testified that she thought he was holding gun, a gun to the back of her head during the assault. Afterward, Gary tied her up and locked her in the box. While Charlene was secured in the box, Gary and Timothy went about their plan to dispose of Jeffrey's body. Gary began dismembering Jeffrey in the bathtub. Gary, with Timothy's help, began distributing Jeffrey's remains into the bayou that ran behind Gary's property using a boat Gary borrowed from neighbor only hours before. Charlene, asleep and still locked in the box, awoke to the sound of the telephone ringing. When no one answered it, uh, Charlene reasoned that the house was empty. She mustered all her energy and began banging on the top of the box, and the lid popped off. Charlene managed to get out of the house. She grabbed her clothes and ran to a neighbor's house to call the police. Wow, that is something else. In 1998, the Mississippi legislature amended the Section 99 manner and inflicting the punishment of death shall be by continuous intravenous administration of a lethal quantity of an ultra short acting barbiturate or other similar drugs in combination with a chemical paralytic agent until death is pronounced by the county coroner where the execution takes place or by a licensed physician according to the accepted standards of medical practice. Boy, they wanted him. Okay. Anesthetic, penobitrol, 2 grams. Isn't that grams? Mm. Normal saline, 10 to 15 cc. Provolone 50 mg per 50 cc, potassium chloride 50 ml per 50 cc. Um, Lethal injection is the world's newest method of execution, while the concept of lethal injection was first proposed. Okay, all right. So, y'all, he died. Okay, and glad he gone. This is what he ate.